Nice and quiet. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to do a quick lecture on the soil types, rock types effects on plant growth in Southern California. So, high school students, this is going to be kind of an addendum to your class. Just a little bit extra stuff, like recording this for you. All right. So, Southern California, everybody has the same rock types all over the place, all over the world. And the rock types have certain effects on what plants grow on them. So we have three types of rocks. Before I get into this, I'm going to write them on the board. So I'm going to turn this sideways, and that way you can hear me and see me talking. So the first type of rocks we're going to have are called igneous. Let me turn this. So igneous rocks, these are rocks that they're formed from either magma or lava. And we'll talk about the difference between the two. Question?
So would obsidian be one of those?
Yes. So obsidian is definitely an igneous rock. So magma is lava under the surface of the ground. It hasn't come up through a volcano yet. It's underground still. Magma. Lava is magma that comes onto the surface. Okay. But they're the same thing, just technically one's under the ground, one's at the surface. Magma or lava. Okay, so magma, it can cool. Let me get rid of lava real quick. It can cool below the surface. Right? So lava can harden and turn into a rock down lower under the ground. Okay, so that happens a lot. In fact, all of these rocks out here, these mountains to our north and east, and our San Gabriel Mountains, a lot of this mountain range is made out of granite. In fact, we're sitting on top of granite right here at the college. That was magma that cooled deep underground, and over time, erosion has exposed that rock, which used to be the magma. Question?
Isn't granite radioactive?
A lot of rocks are radioactive. So granite, yes, is one of them, but most are. So these rocks that form under the surface, they make a lot of our bedrock around our area. So in Southern California, we have a lot of granite, and granite is a igneous rock that's formed deep underground. Okay, now remember, lava has to be magma that's extruded on the surface. Okay, so lava comes up in a volcano, comes on the surface. So lava is a little different. The reason why is when you see lava rock, it's cooled magma that happened on the surface. So it has a different, some different same chemistry, but it's formed different. It looks different. It's black. It's got very, very big crystals, and it cools fast, stuff like that. So igneous is the lava rocks, the rocks made from the earth itself, right? So the igneous rocks, they have lots of minerals. They have lots of minerals because they're made out of minerals themselves, right? Magma, lava is liquid rock, so it's liquid minerals. So we see lots of micronutrients in it, right? Lots of metals sometimes, like iron. We see potassium, phosphorus. And both magma, the rocks that cooled deep underground, and lava have a lot of these minerals. So a lot of volcanoes, a lot of places that have volcanic soil have a lot of agriculture because that volcanic soil tends to be rich in minerals. So you guys are here on granite. Granite is high in minerals. In fact, one source for Micronutrients, a fertilizer, a good source for fertilizer is crushed granite dust. It has a lot of nutrients in it. In particular, we got a lot of potassium and phosphorus. So our local soils here in the Mojave Desert and lots of Southern California have a lot of naturally occurring potassium and phosphorus. It comes out of the rocks. Up here in the high desert, you have a lot of iron. The rocks have a lot of natural iron in them. That's because you're dealing with igneous rocks. So igneous are pretty cool. Igneous also tend to be slightly acidic, less likely to be alkaline. Not saying there aren't alkaline igneous rocks, because there are. There's acidic, alkaline, everything. But we do see a lot of acid, some acidic soils based off of these volcanics. So like most of your granite soil tends to be somewhat acidic. Tends to fight off a lot of alkaline. The other cool thing about igneous rocks is the igneous rocks, since they're constantly being formed, they're constantly being formed underground and above ground, they form a lot of our parent material in geologically active areas, right? We're a geologically active area, so we have a lot of igneous rocks. That's pretty cool. I'm going to start the next one. So we have another class of rocks besides igneous, and that's the sedimentary. And these are the layers, the rocks that form layer after layer after layer of things falling down and accumulating over time. Think about sand, right? If you're in a desert, every year sand blows in, dust comes in, and you'll get layer after layer of sand. Eventually, those layers compact down over time, get buried, get squeezed, get cooked as they get buried deeper and deeper, and it'll turn to sandstone. You live in a lake. At the bottom of a lake, it's mud, right? Every year we get layers of mud. Over millions of years, that mud compacts and hardens and turns into mudstone, right? What about if you live at the bottom of the ocean? You have a bunch of animals living, right? All the little shellfish and coral reefs and everything that poops and is floating around the water. Every year that makes layers and layers of dead stuff, shellfish that turns into limestone, right? All the dead shells that turns into chalk, which is limestone. So that's sedimentary. Yes.
It's essentially like debris, right?
Debris. Mm-hmm. Sand building up, sandstone. Mud building up, mudstone. Dead animals with shells building up, limestone. So these sedimentary rocks are built of layers of stuff that builds up, whatever that is, over time. So sedimentary can occur anywhere, right? Because everywhere on the earth, stuff accumulates. So it has nothing to do with volcanoes and stuff like that. Okay, so it's separate of igneous rocks. Question.
Would dirt just count as that?
Dirt can count as sedimentary because it's dust. It's just kind of what's out, debris.
No, I mean, is dirt technically a rock?
It's made of rocks. But dirt is a subjective term that has no definition. Really. Dirt is something dirty. Because we don't call soil dirt. Soil is either soil or substrate. Dirt's what's under your fingernails. Dirt's what you wash out of your clothes and stuff like that. We don't use that terminology in science. So sedimentary tends to be low in nutrients. Whereas igneous tends to be, now there's always exceptions, where igneous tends to be high in minerals, sedimentary tends to be low in minerals, especially if it's made out of something that's mineral, not very high in minerals to begin with. Let's take the Tums. Remember I told you Tums is mined in the Lucerne Valley, calcium carbonate. So calcium carbonate, calcium plus carbonate. So those two minerals together creates a rock, chalk. Chalk is calcium carbonate. It's white. It's all the dead coral and all the dead shells in the bottom of the ocean. it's very low in nutrients. It doesn't have a lot of nutrients. It has a lot of calcium and it has a lot of carbon, but that's about it. And it's hard on plants because there's so much calcium that it gets in the way of the plants taking up the NPK and other micronutrients. It also doesn't really hold a lot of nutrients. Its chemistry is such that it's fairly alkaline. The soils, remember, tums to stop your acid, tends to be very alkaline because shells are alkaline, which is made of calcium. So that rock type is a tough one for plants to grow on. And we get some interesting plants that grow in the calcium carbonate out here. They only live on that soil. Right? So there's a lot of stuff. What's a form of sedimentary rock is oil though, right? Oil and coal, right? Layers of dead animals and trees. That's sedimentary. So there's some shale out there. There's like shale deposits which are made of dead stuff. So there could be nutrients in there, but they're usually not plant nutrients.
Oil is just a product of sedimentary rock.
Yeah, oils. Yeah, exactly. It's the ooze of all the dead animals and plants that have been squished out of that rock. The sedimentary, generally low in nutrients, and depending on what's it made of. Right, sandstone. Sandstone is just a bunch of sand compressed, so it's fairly low in nutrients. Especially if that sand is eroded other rocks over time, right? You just keep building rocks out of other rocks. You don't rebuild the rocks physically by adding new lava, you run out of the nutrients. All right, you take any rock at all, sedimentary and igneous, and if it gets buried deep enough, right, over time, everything gets buried, or if that rock gets pushed deep under the earth, is it cold or hot deep under the earth? You get a mile down, is it cold or hot down there? Really hot. When you first dig a cave, yeah, it's cool and comfortable for the first couple 100 feet. But the deeper you go, the closer you're getting to more earth, and you closer you're getting to all that magma, excuse me, in the center, the hotter it gets, and also pressure, right? Weight. So it's like a pressure cooker. The deeper you go into the earth, you take sedimentary rock, you take igneous rock, and you push it deep down into the earth, and you get metamorphic. Which means it's changed, right? Metamorphic, metamorphose, it's changed into something. A good example, I think, is a limestone. So limestone made from the dead shells and coral reefs. If it gets cooked and pressed hard enough, it turns into marble, which is a metamorphic rock. Question.
Would it be like those quartz caves down in Mexico?
No, quartz is more of an igneous. Quartz, those crystals precipitated out of water. So it's a little different. A little different. Similar idea.
What about diamond?
Diamond would be more metamorphic because it's the carbon, coal, crustal. I think technically that crystals are metamorphic. So imagine a crystal, sugar, salt crystals in water. You ever made sugar rock candy? You put a bunch of sugar in water and eventually the water evaporates and you're left with just the sugar and it forms crystals, right? So that is somewhat of a sedimentary process.
Well, because crystals aren't technically rocks, right? Aren't they just like byproducts of rocks?
They are byproducts of rocks because they're made of the water dissolved. So in the giant crystal cave he's talking about, we have giant quartz crystals. The quartz was dissolved out of the rock in the water, and then when the water evaporated in this special environment, it left behind big crystals.
You can tell me it's just a giant gold beam.
Yes. So the crystals themselves are just byproducts of the rocks. What's in the rocks, the minerals. But metamorphic is what happens when you change the rocks completely. Because if you cook them and pressurize anything, it's going to change into something else. And metamorphics can be really crazy. The state's rock of California, our state rock is called serpentine. And we don't have a lot of it here in Southern California. We have igneous, we have sedimentary. We don't have a lot of serpentine, but serpentine is toxic to a lot of plants. It's full of metal.
Except Darwin's.
Yeah. So you get weird plants that grow on serpentine because it's this metamorphic rock that's been changed deep down and then brought back up to the surface, and it's got new, different chemistry than it started out with. So metamorphics are pretty interesting. You get a lot of weird metamorphic rocks. So those are the three basic rock types in geology. And we're going to talk we're going to talk a little bit more about how they change. I'm going to walk this way back to my computer. So let's talk about these soil plant relationships in the PowerPoint. So I'm on slide 1. So slide 1 of the PowerPoint here. If you're watching the video, it's backwards, so I do apologize, but I'll talk about what's on there. So in restoration projects, whenever we're going to grow plants, you take a soil type, right? You want to know what type of soil you have. We got pH. We covered nutrients. You also know what type of soil it is, igneous, sedimentary, that type of stuff. That'll help you. So when we do restoration projects, we really need to know what the soils are because that dictates how the plants are going to grow. Remember, in a restoration project, I'm not a farmer. I'm not watering the plants. I'm not fertilizing them. I have to put them out there and let them do their own thing. So it's important I put the right plants out there. And we do that with ArcGIS and different GIS technology. We make soil maps. We upload soil maps from the computer to see what's going on and where it's at. Question.
During initial plantings, during the restoration projects, do you have to actually water them at least once?
We do water them in the beginning, but we don't water them continually. So like I said, along with soil type, we're really concerned about elevation and how steep those hills are. But the soil is big time. So like in the desert, only certain plants are going to grow in calcium carbonate. Only certain plants will grow on granite and sandstone and vice versa. So if you get the wrong plants on the wrong soil, they're not going to grow. So that's very interesting. Plant affinities to soil type. Remember, some plants, they don't move, right? They have to grow up in the soil they're used to. That means that some plants, if they grow up in an area with a high pH acid, they need acid soil. So that means you really, really need to know where the plants come from. Let's say this orchid. Is this orchid growing in soil? Not at all. So some plants you don't even grow in soil. A lot of people, when they buy orchids, they put potting soil in them, they kill them, because the plant doesn't grow in soil. So you have to know about where your plants come from, right? Where are they native to? Which means what type of soils are they used to? Like blueberries. Blueberries come from swampy soils in the southeast. They like acid conditions. They hate Mojave Desert soil. Everything about the Mojave Desert soil is wrong. The pH is high. It's full of minerals they've never seen before. Blueberries are used to sedimentary rocks, not igneous rocks. So stuff like that. Also the texture, right? Plants that grow in sandy soil naturally, those plants that naturally grow in a sandy soil, they're not going to do well in a clay soil, right? Because those plants have evolved to have lots of air around their roots. Think of cactus. It's not a good idea to grow your cactus in the clay, even here in the desert, because when that clay gets wet, it stays wet, there's no oxygen, and those cactus roots will die. In fact, in the desert here, if you're out in the Mojave Desert and you want to find the cactus, you need to look for the rocks. The cacti prefer rocks, rocky soil with really good drainage. Doesn't matter if it's calcium carbonate, lava rocks, or sedimentary, they prefer rocky, so they get that good sharp drainage. And serpentine too. Whereas your trees and your bigger shrubs out here in the desert, they're going to prefer soils that have more silt, right? A little bit more silt, a little bit more clays that they can actually hold water. So remember that. Different soils have different plants. In Southern California, we have limestone. And limestone is made from dead sea creatures and shells. Wherever you see limestone in our Mojave Desert, you're going to have what's called an endemic. An endemic is a rare plant. It's a plant that only grows in a certain place. So that little agave here in the picture, that's Agave utahensis, the variety nevadensis. And it only grows on these limestone mountains. And the reason why is that it's like, okay, here's a rock, here's a place where the other plants don't grow, so the competition's low. This plant figures out how to grow there, and it has the whole place to itself, right? It doesn't have any competition. So for a plant growing as an endemic on a specialized soil is a good thing, because if you can figure it out, you have the whole place to yourself. No competition. So the oldest trees in California, the bristlecone pines, which are like 5,000 years old, they also grow on limestone. And the reason is there's no other trees on these mountains with this rocks. If there were other trees there would be fire, there would be diseases and pests. But because they're the only tree that can grow way up in these mountains on this really poor soil, they're all by themselves. They have the place to themselves, and they can grow really old because they don't have competition, right? It's called a niche. You find yourself a niche, you're able to adapt to this hard growing condition, you get the whole place to yourself. So that's nice. Limestone is also really cool. Caves? Limestone dissolves in water. Rainwater is slightly acidic. So when rainwater hits limestone, it dissolves it. And if you live in limestone, you're going to have lots of groundwater and caves. Because, sinkholes. It doesn't hold the water goes through the rock. It dissolves the rock in. So it's really interesting. If you ever go to like Cancun, Mexico, if you ever have the ability to go to the Mayan ruins in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, there are no rivers or lakes in this jungle because all the rainwater that falls percolates down into the rock and forms underground rivers, those cenotes, all those things, those underground lakes there, because it's dissolving the rock. So we see a lot of that in limestone. It doesn't hold on to water good at all because it dissolves. So again, here in the desert and in Southern California in general, if you find limestone, you're going to find special plants. So that's an important thing. Oh, real quick. Limestone is also highly valuable because it makes cement. Limestone, not only Tums, but cement. Tums is not what they're really going after. It's the cement mines. Now, what happens if you're mining limestone rock that a rare plant like that guy grows on? And when you mine all the rock, there's no more limestone left for the plants. You've literally took it away. That's the problem we have here in our desert, is mining threatens rare plants. We'll talk about lithium in a second and how there's a rare plant. There's a big argument over this little plant and the lithium mines. Yeah, the one in Nevada. Volcanic rocks. So volcanic rocks, we have a lot of those here. When you drive from here to Vegas or from here to Arizona, you go up the 15 or the 40 freeway, you pass by lots of volcanoes. Take the 395 up north. You see the black lava fields and the cinder cones out in the desert there. They're fairly young, actually. Some are still considered active. So lava rocks, igneous, remember that's lava on the surface, magmas from underneath. They have a varying pH, but many of them are acidic. Lots of nutrients. Lava is very well drained. You go to Hawaii, parts of Hawaii, there's no rivers, no lakes, again, because you're on lava rock, and lava rock is just a bunch of holes, right? It's full of gas. And when the gas escapes, it's like a holy rock, spongy rocks. That's why if you ever have a barbecue, they use lava rock because it doesn't get hot. It just kind of sits there inside the barbecue rock. Gas barbecues, propane, they put lava rocks on top of it. Why do they use lava rock and not limestone rocks or not granite rocks? Because if you put any harder rock on there, it would get really, really hot and would destroy your barbecue. Lava rocks do not. They're full of holes. They only get as hot as the fire itself, and therefore they don't damage your barbecues. Just like the panels on the spaceship, a space shuttle, right? It's made out of ceramic with a lot of little holes. That's why it doesn't heat up. Lightweight too. So lava rock's a little different than limestone. lava rocks actually do hold a lot of water. They're full of holes. So the water moves through rocks, the lava rocks, sorry, the igneous rocks quickly, but at least it's held on there. So they're well drained, but in a good way, kind of. Right. And then again, volcanic rocks, there's some endemics out here in our desert too. But most of the endemic plants are in the limestone. And then serpentine. So in this picture here on the slide, you see the forest in the background, and you have this bare patch of earth in the front. This is a natural occurring juxtaposition of plant types. The soil here is toxic to most plants. This is serpentine rock. Everything else is the same as 50 feet away. The climate's the same. The only difference between back there where the forest is and right here in the foreground is you have that poisonous soil full of nickel and mercury, cadmium metals, because that rock got turned into something else. So we see that a lot. That's the serpentine soils. We see it mostly in Central and Northern California. That's why it's the state rock of California. Down in SoCal, we don't have as much. We don't have as much. A lot of serpentine, it's really interesting. A lot of serpentine is the ancient seafloor crusts. So imagine the old bottom of the ocean gets buried deep, goes into a subduction zone, and goes way down into earth and gets turned into this serpentine. It's pretty interesting. All right, so those are our three types of parent material rocks effects on your soil. Now, when you are, there's plenty of apps. You can download several apps on your phone that will tell you your soil type anywhere in the US. There's several free, really good soil. If you go onto your app store and type in soil map, soil type map, or soil type finder, there's different apps for all different phones. There's USGS, which is a good one. Anyways, there's multiple ways to figure out what your soil is without testing it. So I recommend searching on apps for a free one. They work great, especially if you get into the business. You can kind of, as you go to your customer's house, you can kind of, okay, what am I dealing with? And you'll be told what type of soil you have, you know, how deep it is, what the parent material is, stuff like that. It's going to look like a report card, and it might be kind of hard to read, but after a while, you'll see what's important: the NPK, the pH, all that stuff. So something easy to do. All right, for you guys, I'm going to end this video right now.